Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we are talking about how several Nintendo Direct rumors have just dropped, all of which are suggesting September is the month. In the middle of September, more specifically, the second week of September, and it does look like this is going to be tying into both Metroid Prime 4 and Mario's 40th anniversary, so we actually have quite a bit to discuss today. But before going forward, let me simply take this moment to ask that if you do find yourself enjoying videos about Nintendo rumors, theories, and news, perhaps consider subscribing. I would appreciate it. So as I said, we have 4 different sources now saying a Nintendo Direct is not only happening in the month of September, but in the middle of September. So the first person to break out this information, or rather the first couple, is Attack the Backlog, friend of the channel, and also Nash Weedle, perhaps our favorite leaker when it comes to a whole bunch of different Nintendo things, who has been continually getting things right throughout the year. Now, to speak to the credibility towards Attack the Backlog hasn't been doing this for very long, but he has a source who has told him about some things and has been correct thus far. He was told about the partner showcase, he told that to everyone, he even scheduled his own live stream well in advance, a week in advance, for the exact time of this partner showcase, was totally spot on. He teased The Adventures of Elliot to be one of the biggest announcements during the show, and that's exactly what happened. And now he's hearing that a Direct is happening not in the first week of September, not in the last week of September, but in the middle of September, and he recently just recorded a podcast with Nash Weedle, which he teased last night on Twitter, and when you watch this clip, here, I'll just play it here.
Puede que sea, pero en el tema de Direct general me dieron no las primeras semanas y creo que me dieron la última tampoco, porque queda la segunda y la tercera. La última no es. Exacto. Entonces hablé contigo, ¿no? Y hey, Nash, ¿tú qué sabes? He oído esto, ¿no? Y tú, no, bueno, hasta ahora no has publicado esto, pero no, y no sé si tú quieres decir. No. Si no quieres decir, no digas. Sí. Vale, entonces, es lo que yo he oído. ¿Tú qué puedes decir del tema Direct?
Bueno, prácticamente lo que has dicho tú se confirma. A mí también me han hablado de... Bueno, yo ya publiqué un vídeo sobre los directs que habrían, de todo lo que has dicho. Y a mí me dicen que el Nintendo Direct general es la segunda semana de septiembre.
And so there you have it, during this clip, teasing the podcast, which will be coming out a little bit later. So definitely make sure to check out Attack the Backlog. His YouTube channel will be linked in the description below. Give him a follow, subscribe to his YouTube channel, and there you'll see the podcast with Nash Weedle when it comes up shortly. But he said he heard the second or third week, and then Nash Weedle confirms he heard the second week more specifically. And just to bring up, we recently mentioned how Nash Weedle had told us about Indiana Jones and the Great Circle coming to Nintendo Switch 2 well before anyone else has said anything else about this game coming to the console, and it's recently been confirmed. It's another one of several things that Nash Weedle has told us about in regards to Nintendo Switch 2 that have come true throughout this year. And so reasons have been continually mounting to show that both Attack the Backlog and Nash Weedle appear connected, have accurate sources. That does not mean everything they say or hear is going to come true, but when a lot of it is coming true, there's absolutely reason to consider it as a possibility, and in my opinion, it seems like a very likely possibility. And there's actually a lot more to what's going on of this podcast with Attack the Backlog and Nash Weedle. We'll be circling back to this though, in terms of like contents of what this Direct may contain. We'll be coming back to that. What I want to talk about next though is how there are other sources saying the same thing. So shortly afterwards, Switchforce, another friend of the channel, said this on Twitter. Nintendo tried to phone in an emergency about the missing Switch 2 games, but they accidentally dialed 912. So, for those who are unaware of what's going on with Switchforce, Switchforce has, as of late, been trying to provide accurate leaks as to what's going on regarding Nintendo Directs after the whole beat-em-ups fallout. For those that don't know, beat-em-ups is one of the biggest Nintendo YouTubers there are, and he lied about Nintendo Direct leaks in a podcast, and people believe that he might know something because he is one of the biggest Nintendo YouTubers there are, and he just chose to lie as an experiment. Not everyone liked that. Beat 'em Ups has since apologized for the situation, but still, not everyone agrees with the choices he made there. Anyways, Switchforce accurately teased an indie showcase, and so people think Switchforce has some knowledge on what's going on behind the scenes, and I think there's definitely a decent chance of that, and especially now that he's saying this particular date. He had also recently said, in regards to this Nintendo Direct, that it'll be coming sooner than expected, and at a time or a date that people wouldn't be thinking. Something along those lines, and so here he's saying it'll be happening not on September 11th, but September 12th, which if you check the calendar, is actually a Friday, and a Friday would definitely be an unusual time for Nintendo to host a Nintendo Direct. However, what's increasingly more interesting about this situation is that September 12th is only a day away from September 13th. And actually, if the Nintendo Direct on this supposed Friday, September 12th, happens late enough, in some regions around the world, it would actually be September 13th, which is literally the day of the Super Mario Bros. Anniversary. And we've been talking about how there are signs pointing towards Nintendo celebrating Mario's anniversary this year, as they do in a big way every 5 years. And that has also been rumored that there is going to be some sort of big Mario 40th anniversary celebrations where there would be announcements in relation to that, perhaps also including a game to come out in the month of September, which interestingly, Nintendo has not announced any titles from them to come out in the month of September, which seems very odd to do in this launch year Switch 2, especially following the month of August, which has been fairly light in comparison to June and July. So, my personal opinion, we are definitely getting a Mario 40th anniversary announcement of some kind in September, and I think it's going to come out in the month of September. Rumor has it might be Mario Galaxy 2 Remastered. That's what I'm kind of pulling for. It could be something else. But we saw something very similar happen with Super Mario 3D All-Stars back in 2020, where they had a Direct early on in the month. It was announced at the end of the Direct, and it came out a couple weeks later, so Nintendo had a substantial release for that month of September back in 2020. I think we're looking at a similar scenario here. Even if it's not this rumored Galaxy 2 remaster, some kind of Mario Anniversary release, I think, is coming out in the month of September. It makes way too much sense. And so what Switchforce is hearing here is that there would be a Direct that would line up with Mario's 40th anniversary and would be happening in the second week of the month. Which also lines up with what both Attack the Backlog and Nash Weedle are saying here. But there's more. There's another source here corroborating this information. VGC, Video Games Chronicle, which a lot of people hold with a certain level of credibility, has also said, sources have told VGC that a Nintendo Direct presentation is in fact planned for mid-September. The second week of the month, late into the week of that second week, is certainly mid-September. And so we have 4 different sources here on there being a September Nintendo Direct in the middle of the month. I would say it's actually a lot of sources when we're still about 3 weeks away from when this would be happening. But some of you might be wondering, well, what's going on with this triple Nintendo Direct rumor as I discussed a few weeks ago? This triple Nintendo Direct rumor is coming from Nash Weedle, who said he had heard about a Mario 40th anniversary presentation, a September Nintendo Direct, and a Metroid Direct to be announced in this September Nintendo Direct. And Attack the Backlog has also said he has heard about 2 Directs in September. And so what's going on here? Are they combining the Mario 40th Anniversary Direct and the General Direct into one presentation? Is it not actually going to be 2 different Directs in the month of September? That is a possibility. It's also possible what everyone's hearing about here is just the Mario 40th Anniversary presentation, and we're not hearing about when the General Direct of September would be happening. And what I would like to point out is that recently I've been theorizing in Nintendo handling these Direct presentations in waves. We've actually been seeing them handling this in waves over the last year or so. They had multiple Directs in quick succession back last year, where within about a week of each other there was the Museum Direct and then the combined Indie Showcase and Partner Showcase. Then earlier this year they had the big general final Switch 1 Direct at the end of March, then less than a week later they held the first epic Switch 2 Direct and then just a couple weeks after that, they had the Mario Kart World Direct. 2 waves right there. And then most recently, we had the Partner Showcase, and then a little bit afterwards, we had the Indie World Showcase, maybe just a tiny wave. But now we're hearing about multiple directs in September, and then a Metroid Direct to follow afterwards, not necessarily in September. So while there may be little things in between, like the Kirby Air Riders Direct, the Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct, it does seem like Nintendo is handling most of the news coming in bigger waves. So, a Mario 40th Anniversary presentation may make a lot of sense, but that's not enough for everything that needs to be done. We're going a whole bunch of third-party games, and even also first-party games from Nintendo outside of Mario. So perhaps having a Mario Anniversary Direct at the end of the second week of September, and then maybe shortly afterwards, less than a week later, they have another Direct that's about everything else. Not too different from how they handled the late March Direct and the early April Switch 2 Direct. And then all of a sudden we have our double Direct for September, and then perhaps in that second bigger Direct, they announce a game-specific Direct. This time would be for Metroid Prime 4, but back in April, they had announced a Mario Kart World Direct. They could be following a very similar template here. Personally, I'm hoping that it is indeed 2 different Directs. We start off with the Mario Anniversary Direct, then we get the General Direct and a Metroid Direct later. If they combine them, that would be fine as well, but it's kind of fun to have a separate Mario Anniversary presentation where Nintendo can focus on just Mario Anniversary related things that go beyond just games. But if that is exactly how things are going to go down, if there's going to be a separate Mario Anniversary Direct first before the General, and if it's happening on September 12th or the 13th depending on the time zone, the actual anniversary of Mario, what would this mean for an actual game release? Because back in 2020, the September Direct was actually at the beginning of the month, the Mario Anniversary one, on September 3rd, and the game didn't come out till September 18th, 3D All-Stars, a couple weeks later. I'm sort of figuring it would be working a bit differently here. I could see them shadow dropping whatever this Mario Anniversary release is immediately, and then a couple weeks later, the physical version could come out, somewhat similar to how Nintendo's handled some shadow drops in recent history, like Metroid Prime Remastered. The game was shadow dropped during a Nintendo Direct, and then a couple weeks later, there was a physical version, so Nintendo can enjoy the double dip. And when it comes to Mario's Anniversary, they'll probably get a lot of double dipping. Many people are going to bite on that, perhaps myself included. I would love to play the game immediately, but then I might simply also want to have whatever this anniversary game is as a collector's item that will remain untouched. But then if they do that, that may also come with the implication it could be another limited release, which may not leave so many people so happy. But that part is just my speculation. I'm not sure what exactly is going to go down. Now, I said I would circle back to other topics related to this Nintendo Direct having to do with this podcast between Attack the Backlog and Nash Weedle. Now, this podcast hasn't come out yet. Again, Attack the Backlog's channel will be linked in the description below, so you can check out his YouTube channel and watch that podcast when it drops, which I believe will be tomorrow. But Nash Weedle does list topics that are covered during the podcast. Nintendo Direct general date, which was teased in that clip I showed you earlier. Other Directs, them talking about other Directs, and when they say other Directs, that means more than one more Direct, so that means at least 2 more. They could be speaking on the triple Direct rumor/theory. DLSS, Deep Learning Super Sampling, we have heard that Nash Weedle has talked about how there should be an update for DLSS on Switch 2 later on this year. And what I find interesting about that is that we look at a lot of games from Gamescom demonstrations and such. I really feel like we're not seeing the full benefits of Switch 2 yet, and perhaps it has something to do with DLSS not being fully utilized yet. So hopefully there is something going on there, and we do see a lot of big third-party games take another step up in the coming months or year or so. Gamescom backstage, perhaps whatever happened behind the scenes, Ghost of what? There's a few potential games that could be related to, so there may be a hint of the Ghost of series coming to Switch 2. That would be wild. Speaking on Retro Studios, which I would also assume would have to do with Metroid Prime 4, so that sounds pretty exciting. And Zelda. Zelda what? Are we going to get another hint about Zelda's 40th anniversary and the long theorized and now also rumored Ocarina of Time remake? Could be something else. This would be a series of rumors, right? But they are exciting ones coming from people that I think are absolutely worth having a conversation about. And so I'm getting excited for this podcast. So again, check out Attack the Backlogs channel. Will be linked in the description below. There's a lot of possibilities here, and the more and more I think about it, we are entering this next phase of the Switch 2, right? We got that first initial wave, but I think it's about time for Nintendo to really kick things into gear. It does seem like, as of late, the overall excitement and interest in Nintendo and the Switch 2 has been waning, simply because they haven't been saying that much. But I think we're getting very close to Nintendo opening up about things again here, where there's going to be a lot more to talk about. Perhaps something Zelda related will be teased in this next Direct. We'll finally see more about Metroid Prime 4. That's going to give us a lot to be excited about, whatever this Mario Anniversary thing is. And perhaps more. Maybe they'll finally tease the next true new 3D Mario. Or really, there's a whole bunch of possibilities for other big announcements to be made, because we're truly very early on into this generation of Switch 2, and there are so many big projects that we're waiting to hear about here. We could hear about several, so there's a lot to be excited about here. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.